Right. So just nice and easy, give yourself a chance to loosen up and just sort of burn off some of that chill that it's not supposed to chill, it's the damp. There's that sort of feel about it. So a couple of slow, gentle breaths. Wait, easing forwards a little bit. Just allow your hips to drop back so that you drop your center of gravity down. This feeling of your torso dropping down between your legs. Allowing a freer movement from this middle part of the body, and just check. It's worth at the start exaggerating this. It does become a very subtle movement, so that it almost visibly disappears. But we want to make sure that we're not moving from up here. Just you can do this. You just place your hand on your belly, and as you turn, you'll find that your hand is moving, of course, and that's really what you're looking for, is that clear movement in the middle of the body. Just turning as far as the space there allows you to. So that there's a sort of slowing down here, and then you're sort of drawn back, whipped back. There always seems to be that slowing down more. I'm not sure how it's difficult to describe, but I suppose if you ever bounce on a trampoline, you sort of go up in the air and you drop down quite fast. You hit the trampoline and then it all slows you down, and then you feel a little push and then you go up. And it's the same in all directions in Tai Chi, whether it's up and down, side to side. So we get to here quite quick and then slowing down, and then there's this sort of little bit of a push back. I'm not suggesting you have to make that happen. So sometimes when I say things like this, I get people going, making a very deliberate movement. If you've got the space there, and assuming everything's working okay, it's just a natural thing. The trampoline doesn't need somebody controlling it to make it do that. And you know, your muscles, tendons, ligaments, fascia, all the soft tissue really of the body has this elastic quality to a greater or lesser extent. So it would tend to behave the same. And just beginning to feel that up through maybe your sides, or maybe through the front of your body, maybe through your back. It's happening all around your body. So as you get more used to this, to begin with, we should be thinking this, that when I turn in my hips, my shoulder turns with me. So it's like from here to here. But that elasticity spreads up through your body, so that eventually, I'm with my hand behind my back for the moment, there's a little bit of movement there, and then slightly further, I'm exaggerating this, but all the way up through, you should feel that pull beginning, and a pull, not a tightening, and that's quite a fine distinction to make. So images I've offered to people in the past, like a tent with its guy ropes spread out, you know, in that sense that there's a little bit of give in the guy ropes, but between them they're supporting the tent. Another image, slightly different, might be something like a guitar, a stringed musical instrument, where when you get the tuning right, the movement that produces the sound is correct. That latter image is quite an interesting one, because of course movement, sound, energy, they all have a certain aspect of vibration. So yeah, and if you pluck up a guitar string in a well-tuned instrument, you'll feel it all the way through the instrument. So we have this idea summed up in one of the Tai Chi writings, and with the phrase that when one part of your body is in motion, your whole body is in motion. Another thing to pay attention to is what the back of your body is doing. I said you have one hand on the front, but if you put a hand on the back, you'll also feel it moving. And if you put one hand on your front, one hand on your back, they are, of course, they're apparently moving in opposite directions. So we have two things. We have a circular movement in our body, but also really at any point in that circle, you could have a straight line coming off it. I think they're called vectors in mathematics. So there's a multitude of directions. And so if, for instance, I had a ball in my hand or something I could throw, try and find something I could, oh, this is good. So if I have this in my hand, you can't really see it, can you? It doesn't matter what it is. And I do this. So I've just got my fingers wrapped around it. But then if I undo my fingers, it goes that way, even though my hand continues around here. So that was the line that comes off it. And if you think about some of the movements that we do, you'll realize that some of the movements come out straight, but then they get drawn back. But for a moment, they're straight. So those of you who are doing the 10-step, for instance, so when we do brush the knee, that's the circle, and that's the straight line that comes off it. So the circular movement that we're creating in the center of the body and the connections that radiate out from that become very important for us in various ways. And then just raising your arms. Good. Let your hands come to rest. Rolling your weight forwards and backwards in your feet. See how far it's comfortable to go. You want to avoid this. See my heels coming off the ground here. Everything gets a bit wobbly. But even before that, you want to avoid this sort of beginning of the gripping in your body, muscles tightening, joints tightening, as you approach that sort of edge of the movement. To begin with, it's good to think, the weight's going just as far as the ball of the foot. In the end, you won't get it much further. And in fact, you don't really want to go a long way forward, because then your knees start to overextend. But if you're finding that you don't even get that far forwards, see if you can go, see how far you can go, and then look for a feeling of softening, particularly around your hips and your pelvis. And sometimes when we do that, we feel just a little bit more space builds up. So you may just get a little bit further forward, or indeed back. But I would say the limits of the movement are the front part of your heel, that point just behind the ball of each foot. Because any further than that, and just the mechanics of the movement become difficult. Imagine you're standing in a river and just moving against the pressure of the water in each direction. Hold your hands out to the sides, and what will happen is, of course, if you're in water, your body will go forward, but your arms will stay behind slightly and then come through, likewise going back. And again, it's something you want to think about in terms of the feeling in the soft tissue of the body. Probably easier to concentrate on a few muscles in your back and your arms, that you can feel them extend, but before they grip, that's when your hands will come back. Just gradually through all of these points, that this little change in awareness of the connections in the body, what's happening behind us as well as in front of us, gradually help us to change our perspective, and we develop more of a sort of holistic view of our body. We will always put more emphasis on the front of our body because that's the way we look, and eyesight is one of the dominant senses. But it's good to know that it's not just about the front of our body, what's happening behind, what's happening in the feet, as well as the upper body, and so on and so forth. I think that's the real meaning of this idea that when one part of the body is in motion, the whole body is in motion, or at least a meaning. It shouldn't be taken literally. Another would be the movement within your body. So if you imagine that you're full of water, then if you get, I don't know, a bowl full of water and you tip it, all the water moves, not just the bit nearest where the edge is going downwards or anything like that. Water moves as a whole unit, unless something is interrupting it. And we're looking for that sense of movement within the body. Now let your weight settle forwards, hips drop back. And as your hips drop back, bringing your hands around, so they're just scooping underneath a ball. And then pushing up. And pressing down. Focusing to begin with on just allowing your center of gravity to drop, or if you prefer, the feeling of your torso sliding down between your legs, whatever idea, whatever image works for you. Keeping the same body movement. Just let your hands come out to your sides. A little bit more sideways expansion in your body. And then parting the clouds. One more time. Good. Now, dragon plucks the stars from the sky. When you make this little rotating movement with your arm, again, I come closer so that you can see your arm comes up. It'll probably be higher than this. You wrap your fingers around so it's hollow, and then rotating your arm, and then let your elbow draw down. So I sometimes say it's like plucking an apple off a tree, but if you think not an apple, but something like a plum or something like that, you wouldn't squeeze it tight because it's a soft fruit. So one more time. So just come to the higher position. So what we've been doing is sinking down there, but actually a lot of the exercises are done in this upper position. But notice that I'm still sitting back, and just again feel what movement is available to you. One hand on the front, one hand on the back, so you can feel it both sides. And if you put your arms out, don't sort of try and move your arms any further. Go to there. Don't try and move around any further. So that this is the basic movement for the next exercise. When we do the turning. So bringing your hands to your sides, pushing in 4 directions. First of all, pushing up. And returning, bringing your attention and your hands back to this center part of your body. And then turn in one direction and back. Your hands are open, slightly curved in your fingers and the palm of your hand, aware of the spaces between your fingers and your thumb and finger. And in the back of your mind, that sense of your whole body, that fluidity of movement, so that you would notice if there's any stiffening up, any tightening up, that will almost instantly block that movement. Just like if you talked about water giving us this sense of continuous movement. If you've got a little stream and you put a big lump of wood across it, then immediately the water stops and it loses the connection between the part of the stream above and below the wood. Stiffening up, tightening in, your body has the same effect. Do one more round. Drawing the fingers, one hand back, letting your arms hang down. Push down through the heel of your palm and feel that movement turning into the circular movement and then down. So just as we can take a line away from a circle that goes straight, so we've got the opposite happening here, that we gently push the heel of the palm down, so that's a straight line, but because your arm's attached to your shoulder, it will swing around, make this circular movement. And then, if it's comfortable, add in the turn. And you should find that more comfortable in your shoulder, and indeed in your hip and everything in between, because it moves you away in your mind from the idea that you have to lift your hand. Once you've started to push down, the energy is already there, and this will have an impact on the turning as well. And then the other hand. So another line in the Tai Chi classics, talking about the energy, the power in the movement, says that the energy is stored and collected in the circle, but released in a straight line. And then add in the turn in. And in the case of solo exercises like this, it's not like you're throwing, and you saw me throwing the little thing. It's not like that because my hand is still attached. So there's the straight line, the circle. So the straight line comes back into a circle eventually, all else being equal. And then sinking down, rowing a boat in the middle of the lake. Remember, again, hips going back, buttocks going back is the main thing to consider here, so that we counterbalance the tendency to think, oh, well, this is about the arms going forwards, which will cause that straining. May even pull you forwards. Same thing here, polishing the table, turn, push your hips back, swing them around, and then just let them tuck under. Turn, push the hips back, swing them around, and tuck under. Turn, push back, swing around. I'm exaggerating this a little bit, of course, so that you can see what I'm doing. So that area between your hips and your waist would always be regarded as the main part of the body that is the center of any circle. One more time. And let your hands drop. Shake out. Good. So we discovered that the center part of the body is crucial in, if you like, creating the shapes. Remember another quote yet again, the mind is like the commander. The center of your body is like the banner. The commands go to the banner, and the banner leads the rest of the rest of the body. We also know that for that to work well, we need to release tightness and stiffness around here. So it's not that we're saying this is the only important part of the body, because without the legs and without our weight being correct and our stance being correct and our alignment with the pull of gravity, we would end up trying to fight against our own body to produce that movement. And we should never be trying to do that in Tai Chi. One of the problems we encounter, I think, is that as soon as we bring an idea of our mind, our awareness into the movement, the phrase that always gets brought up is mind over matter. This is not mind over matter, though. This is what happens when mind and matter, if you like to think of it in that sense. In fact, there's three elements of mind, body, and energy, mind, body, and movement, come together and work together as a harmonious whole. And it's that harmonious quality that we're actually looking to build. So when I use the term center, sometimes I'm referring to the center of the body, and I'll usually say that. But also we could think of the center in a slightly different way, as almost like a concept that encompasses our legs and our feet and things like the movement of our weight as well. And the rhythm of the movement, regardless of what the movement is, will always come back to this kind of area before it moves out again. And that gives us the rhythm: yang extending out, yin drawing in, yang extending out, yin drawing in. And again, we get accustomed to that rhythm working throughout our body. Right. Okay, so I want to take a wider stance, and we'll take a look at part in the wild horse's mane, and then when we started to look at last week, why tape off his fruit. Turn your feet out to 45 degrees, and then push your heels out and turn the toes out again. If this is uncomfortable with you in a full stance, then obviously make it a bit smaller and until it is comfortable. But bear in mind, it depends why it's uncomfortable. I mean, to start off with, it's quite strong on the legs. Well, it's always strong on the legs. It's a good exercise for conditioning the legs. You actually have more space here for that center of your torso dropping down. So they'll at first think, oh, you know, my knees, my ankles, they're going to, actually dropping your center of gravity helps that. And what we need to do is to work on this stance until the muscles of the legs are accustomed to it. But in the meantime, you know, you don't want that to happen. You don't want the knees to pull in. So you begin to transfer your weight from side to side, and it's only 60% of your weight in one leg, 40% in the other. Now that's important because you don't want to go right over here. You see, I'm overextending my knee, and part of the reason for taking a wider stance in these two exercises is so that we can, with the sideways movement, have a sense of being able to judge that 60%. You just got more time to think about it. You go into your left leg and you turn, or rather you let your body turn, and the most you're going to turn at this point is so that you're facing the direction that your left foot is pointing. You push yourself back to the other side and turn. Keep that going. So the turn itself is maybe 30 or 40 degrees. If you place your hands here, just where your leg meets your torso, but just put your fingers in there and you'll feel movement there. It's like between your leg and the torso, there's a little valley. And when we turn this way, the valley on the right side is very narrow and deep, whereas on the other side, it's open and shallow. And then you go across the other side and you reverse that. It's quite an interesting point to focus on. And it's worthwhile spending a bit of time just thinking about this opening and closing of what we refer to in Tai Chi as the Kwa, KWA. Now bring your hands around so they're in front of your belly. Go into your left leg and just have a look down at your left hand. And it's begun to swing out a little bit, but if you just turn it a little bit more, so now it's pretty much pointing in the same direction as your left foot, and then raise it up. And this is basically the posture you want for part in the wild horse's mane. So it's only just a slight movement. Most of this movement, the rotating, comes from the center of your body. Try with the right hand, move across, turn, and as your hip rotates, there's a rotation in your shoulder and your hand lifts. So how this would work, you come back and this time you turn and you bring your right hand back until it's in front of your left hip. So actually you do those three things. You move your weight, you turn in the center of the body, you rotate your arm, and you raise your hand. 4 things, all at the same time. And that just naturally gives us this angling movement upwards. Try with your left hand from starting point in front of the right hip. Now, leaving your hand at shoulder height, you come back and turn. And now your left hand is approaching the point where it's in front of your right shoulder. Turn your left hand in. Your left hand is in, sorry, your right hand is in front of, the lower hand is in front of your hip. Turn the left hand, the top hand in, and you're holding the ball. Move across into your left foot, turn to your left. Your top hand, your left hand, is directly above the hip where it's going to end up. So it only has to go straight down. So now, parting the wild horse's mane. Your body turns just a little bit. And because your body's turning a little bit, your head will move. And so at the end of each stage here, the end of this stage, you're looking across your fingertips. So if you think about it, there's not that much happening. The top hand simply goes down. Nothing more than that. Nothing fancy about turning. Here, your right hand simply stays where it is in relation to the shoulder. And here is the only time the hands rotate. I emphasize that because some funny things can happen. Again here, your right hand will go down, but your left hand, you get that little bit of a rotation in your shoulder. You let your left hand come up and it arrives at shoulder height. That's all you're doing with your hands. The rest of the time, they simply stay where they are and you let the body move them. So don't start rotating your hands here or anything unnecessary like that. Don't add detail to this. And here, that straight line that comes out of the circle is on a diagonal. There's another name for a movement that often looks very much like parting the wild horse's mane and is obviously related to it. It tends to go a little bit further, but it's called slanting bird flying. Now from here, weighting your left foot, and you turn slightly towards the left, but try and get a sense of just dropping this right hip. And what will happen is you'll tend to come around like this. And you let your left elbow drop a little bit and you let your right hand come towards it. And your right hand turns palm back. Now, imagine your fingers of the right hand are stuck in mud. So what you're going to do is you're going to pull up like this. So you pull up and you go back and then you drop down again into your right foot and you turn your hand palm in and then you push forwards into your left foot again. So this is the movement Y-tape offers fruit. Now come back, bringing both hands up across the top of your chest, and then at the end of the movement let your right hand drop down. And now go back into your left foot and turn a little bit. So we do the same thing again. We start off with parting the wild horse's mane, that's one. Instead of just coming straight back, we stay in the right leg, but we drop down more, two. And that brings your left arm towards your right elbow. Turn your hand, left hand palm back. It's stuck in mud. So you pull up, but you don't want to completely straighten the legs, so you pull up and you sort of go over and down. Turn your hands palm in, so you're holding the small ball here and push through. And then make the change over the top of the chest. Let your left hand drop down, so you're holding the ball and come back. Y-tape offers fruit. So let's see, do it by numbers. 1. Center turn into your left. 2, center dropping through the left foot. 3, coming back, hold the ball, 4, into your left again, 5, into your right, drop your right hand down, and 6, carry the ball back into there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So we have a little bit of variety, but not too much in this exercise. Pay attention to the movement of your weight. Turning in the center of your body. And it's also worth thinking a little bit about that area of the quad on both sides. Because we can open out a little bit more. We can get to here, and we've done the big turn as far as we can. We've moved the weight as far as we can. But if we can drop down more, we can close a little bit more in the right quad, open a little bit more in the left, and then just let that reverse so we come around to here. And that gives us a bigger movement coming over and down. So rather than leaving your hand above the leg, as we would do when we do just parting the wild horse's mane on its own, we get to here, and then without straining, just dropping down a little bit more, we open out just a little bit more. This is more like the exercise I described as slanting bird flying. And it means that we've got another stage to the movement. So to begin with, from here, our weight moves, our center turns. But as that slows down, that turn in the center slows down, if we can sink down some more, we still have the advantage of the opening and closing of the quad. We get a little bit more movement, and that little bit of an extension up from the quad, up from your hips, through your body, giving you a slightly more open movement. And again, it's like the trampoline. Here's about as far as I can go. If I go any further, now I'm straining. So here, but this is the limit of my movement. So I stop moving in that direction, and I allow the movement to bring me back here. White ape offers fruit. One more time. And shake out. If you got the email newsletter today, you'll have seen that there's a second YouTube channel being developed, which is specifically for reference. So there's going to be videos on there and tutorials on there on particular things. There was already one up there for that version of White Ape Offers Fruit, as well as Parting the Wild Horse's Mane. So the link there is Cambridge Tai Chi. I know I said this last week, but there's been some trouble with the links. I think I've got it sorted out. You should now be taken straight to a particular web page, and on that web page you'll find the links for that channel. It's all there on the email. If you have any problems, do let me know. Okay, so coming back to the hip width stance, one of the great advantages of horse riding stance is that this starts to feel much more comfortable for obvious reasons. So turn one foot out, step forward with your other foot, and transferring your weight. If you do have a good sense of where you want your weight to settle, then try and remember that when you're moving your weight, Remember, it shouldn't be any further than the ball of your foot. And you can feel why with this exercise, because as you go forwards, the ball of the foot stops you. You know, I mean, sometimes we trip up, don't we, because the ball of the foot catches a step or something like that. I don't want you to trip up. So that's fine going forward. Going back is a little bit trickier because it's natural that the mechanics of the movement mean that your weight goes forwards to the ball of the foot in the front leg. But the mechanics of the movement going backwards mean that your weight goes into your heel, and going any further back in that way, if the weight goes further back, that's when you're going to stumble. So two things to do to remedy that. One is have a very clear idea about where your weight is going to go. So if I'm here on the front leg, I can imagine a diagonal line from the center of my body to the point just behind the ball of my foot. So that helps to really focus my intent into the right place. The other is more mechanical in the sense it's to do with the alignment of my pelvis. Again, here, if I show you, get my hand out the way, there I'm just behind the ball of my foot. But if my pelvis tilts back, my weight goes back into my heel. So it's very important that we keep the pelvis level, and that when we make the effort to move, the effort starts here, and that's unusual because we're trained to walk efficiently. Partly we just pick up the habit, mostly, of angling forwards. So that's fine, by the way. If it's a pivoting from the ankles, it can help you build up a nice momentum while you're walking. But if we try and apply that all the time, then what happens is we just pick up the habit of beginning a movement, or say beginning the step, by using our shoulders. And it's the wrong way round. We should start the step in the feet and so on and so forth. It's like a sprinter in a race. The sprinter on the starting blocks is like that, and their shoulders are already a long way forwards. But actually, when the gun goes, it's going to be their legs that fire them forwards, because it was just the shoulders that fall over. And you do sometimes see that. You do, it's gone too far, looking for that extra split second of time. And then raising your toes and your heel. Another thing to just refer back to, if you can remember when you're doing, particularly I think rowing a boat in the middle of the lake, that if you remember, hips and buttocks went back as the shoulders were going forwards. So one of the things that helps to balance out that tendency to fall is the fact that your hips and buttocks are hanging back, not a long way. It's almost like they're about to drop back. So if you drive a car or ride a bike, doubtless you'll be familiar with the process of you're coming up to a junction, you're coming up to a bend in the road or something like that, or there's traffic in front of you, and you just put your fingers on the brake pedals, or you put on the brake levers, or you put your foot on the brake pedal if you're driving the car. You're not actually applying the brakes at that point, but you're getting ready in case you need to. And in the same way, as you do this movement, just be aware of what's happening there if you did need to put the brakes on. And a knock-on effect from that is that will start to happen in your ordinary walking. And when we start to do the step-in, actually that sinking down in our hips really helps to stabilize us. And on the other side. A lot of these exercises, therefore, actually help us to understand principles by row the boat in the middle of the lake really exaggerates that relationship between our hips and our shoulders. Normally, it's a lot more subtle than that, but if we exaggerate it, we become aware of it, and we notice it working in other contexts. And then raising toes and heel. Stepping in. And step through. And then going back. So that increased awareness of the whole body has many benefits for us, because when we bring our attention to something in our body, that awareness tends to stick after a while. So being aware of your hips and what your hips are doing is really, kind of as fundamental to our movement and as beneficial to our movement. Being aware of your feet, what your hands are doing, what your shoulders are doing, and so on and so forth. Okay, left foot forwards. Fisherman cast net. Again, this is an exercise where our attention gets very quickly drawn to our upper body and our arms and our hands in particular. But imagine you're doing this right on the edge of a cliff. So, your toes, your front toes are on the edge of the cliff, and it's a big sheer drop. I'm not suggesting you go and do that, by the way, in real terms. Just imagine it. And as you get closer to the edge of the cliff, you want to be really careful to not overextend. And it would be really helpful if somebody was standing behind you, grabbed hold of your belt, and just held you. And if you can imagine that happening through the pull of gravity on your hips, you can start to realize that your arms will extend out, and at the same time, there's this feeling of dropping down through your hips. One more time. Step through. Good. And shake out. Lovely. rubbing your hands together. Tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. One shoulder, your arm. The side. Your back. And around your hips. Good. Light on your belly. The upper part of your chest. Check out these little details that I'm giving you, and they gradually accumulate. If something interests you and resonates with you, then great. If they don't, then frankly, it's not worth chasing after. Sometimes I find somebody says something, a teacher says something, doesn't really mean that much, but then maybe a couple of months later, I think back and I think, oh, hold on, didn't so and so say something about that? And then I might go and ask them a question about it, or something like that. Or if something interests me, it's like, rather than thinking, right, I've got to understand this now. It isn't like that. These are like seeds that get planted. So I wouldn't suggest that if you're practicing, you only think about the hips or the quad or whatever. But every now and then, just remind yourself of that. And my experience is that after a while, it just becomes a little bit like second nature. You kind of know that. And what starts off being a little bit awkward, think, oh, God, I can't, and it breaks the flow of the movement or something like that, soon becomes integrated into the whole. So these ideas are there for you to work with as and when it suits you. So coming back to the hip width stance, parallel stance, embrace tiger, return to mountain, sinking down and then pushing up. And once again, there's a natural return for your arms, drawing in, coming back once again to this sense of your center, whatever image or ideas or processes are highlighted for you in this returning movement. Not forgetting that it's not just a physical thing, that it's also a chance for your attention just to settle for a brief moment, an important moment. One more time. And just that. And check it out. Right. Well, that went nice and quickly. Thank you very much, everybody. I don't know what the weather's like out there, but I've got to go out soon. But one way or another, enjoy the rest of your day.